All right. As Amit Shah says that 3 bills are introduced in the Parliament. It will be discussed extensively in the sessions going forward. Nalini brings us a perspective on what this law really means. Nalini, break it down for us. We know that the trial time is now going to be reduced. Deadlines are given to bring in justice for the victims. But speaking of sedition laws, specifically, when something is said to instigate or create hatred, what will be the punishment as per the new law? Is there any specification on that?
Well, Nabila, just to bring some clarity regarding what has happened when it comes to the law of sedition. Law of sedition that was included in Section 124A of the previously what was called the Indian Penal Code has now been changed to Section 150 of this new code that has been brought in by the Parliament. Does not mean it's continued to be called sedition. The new law that has been brought under Section 150 is called the Act of Endangering Sovereignty, unity, and the integrity of India. Now, what the main change from the law of sedition as compared to Section 150 is that they've changed the explanation as to exactly what will constitute as an act of endangering the sovereignty and unity and integrity of India. They've changed the explanation to that to quite an extent, and along with that, under the law of sedition, the punishment was for 3 years, and under the new law, the punishment has been enhanced to a maximum of 7 years. That is the change that has been brought in. Amit Shah is right when he says that Section 124A, as it was as part of the Indian Penal Code, has ceased to exist, which means that the law of sedition has been repealed. But at the same time, the law of sedition has now been changed and is now being called the Act of Endangering the Sovereignty and the Unity and the Integrity of India, which has been introduced as Section 150 as part of the new bill. This is only with regard to the IPC that the changes have been made, because like you correctly pointed out, there are also several changes that have been made to the Criminal Procedure Code regarding how the trials are conducted, the time during which the trials are conducted, and what all remedies are available to the victims in criminal cases to ensure that there is a speedy disposal of justice. So to make good all of those lacunas, the government has tried to expedite the manner in which the criminal trials are conducted in the country. So there are a lot of changes that have been brought out with regard to that. Like I told you earlier, even with respect to protection of women and children, with respect to criminal laws, there are several changes that have also been brought with respect to that, where the punishment has also been enhanced. There is a new law that has been introduced when it comes to mob lynching, which, if I'm given to understand, if I'm not wrong, it attracts the maximum punishment of death sentence under the new laws. But there are a total of 313 changes that right now have been introduced in these 3 new acts that have been introduced by the Parliament, which will respectively replace the Indian Penal Code, the Criminal Procedure Code, as well as the Indian Evidence Act. All 3 of them will be replaced. They have been given new names, and now with these changes being brought in, we can expect a complete overhaul of the criminal justice system. A total of 313 changes, so a lot of changes likely, not only on the procedural aspect, but also on the substantive aspects of the laws regarding what constitutes an offense, what will be the maximum punishment for those offenses. So several changes even being brought about with regard to that. And like Amit Shah stated in the Parliament, law of sedition is going to be a huge talking point with respect to these changes, because although the government claims that the law of sedition has been repealed, but it's been brought in a new packaging in this new law that has now been introduced by the Parliament.
Well, as we see, the punishment, as you also said here, those who commit such a crime, when it comes, the new version of the sedition law here, those accused will also receive up to a life imprisonment. That's what seems like what's broken down here. But let me cut across to Anisha Mathur, who's also joining us right from court. Anisha, if you're tracking what Amit Shah has said, do break it down for us. As Nalini has already mentioned, a couple of laws that will be introduced. First of all, it needs to be passed in the Parliament. And once that is, then it will be a complete overhaul of the current sedition law. Huge changes that's been brought into the the year 1860 that the British had implemented the Indian Penal Code. Amit Shah has now come up with 3 different laws to give it a complete revamp. Break it down for us, please.
Well, yes, let's look at what Amit Shah has really introduced. 3 new laws to replace what is currently the IPC, the CRPC and the Indian Evidence Act. The Nyaya Sanhita, the Nagarik Suraksha Adhiniyam and the new evidence law, all of those are being tabled before the parliament by the Home Minister today. Now, and what is interesting is we've been looking at the content of these bills. Several sections have been reworded, reworked. When you said what we've been talking about, the issue of sedition law, especially since the Supreme Court had issued a stay on sedition and had said, and the government had also been saying that sedition has no place in a democracy. What the new section is defining now, currently in the IPC as it currently exists since 1860, sedition is encouraging disaffection against the elected government. Now, the new section that is there in the new bill, section 150, is talking about anybody who excites or secession, armed rebellion, subversive activities, feelings of separatist activities, or endangers sovereignty or unity or integrity of India, or indulges in such an act shall be punished with imprisonment for life or imprisonment which will extend to 7 years. Now, this is a much larger definition than what was there in the sedition law so far. So we'll have to see how exactly it is coming out when once the bill is actually passed. Let's also see several other points. One very good thing that has come in is that the rape laws have also been overhauled. The voyeurism, stalking, etc. They have been very widely defined. Taking a woman's photographs or disseminating a video of a woman in a private situation, all of these which were laws which were brought in post Nirbhaya, those have been defined further. We now have a much larger definition of crimes against women, of sexual offences against women. However, the question of marital rape, which has been something that has been debated extensively in court and outside, that still remains on the books, but the minimum age for the woman in that situation is now 18 years as far as this particular new law, the new bill is concerned. Laws relating to kidnapping, laws relating to offences against children, all of those are also being included in the newly defined penal code that is being brought in, that is being introduced in Parliament today. If you go back to looking at what the sedition, what we look at the sedition issue is, here the new bill has specifically said that criticism or disapprobation of the administrative action or the measures taken by the government without exciting seditious or separatist activities or endangering sovereignty and integrity is not in fact a crime here. But when you this is going to be a very, very problematic point once this issue comes up for debate, because what this new law says is anything that encourages feelings of separatism or endangers unity and integrity of India or indulges in or commits any such act in any manner shall be punished. So how exactly do you define an act which endangers sovereignty or integrity of India? Because remember, so far, sedition, especially after court interventions, that law had been redefined by the courts to say that any action of disapprobation, of encouraging disapprobation against the government will only be punishable under sedition if it creates a situation of violence. That particular point that the courts had been harping about, that you cannot punish somebody for simply criticizing or making a statement unless it results in violence or some violent activity. That particular safeguard is not currently here in what we can see from section 150 that has come in the proposed bill. So a lot of things will have to be debated, a lot of things will have to be considered.
And it all depends on whether the parliament is going to welcome it. With the Lok Sabha, they have the numbers. Rajya Sabha is going to be where the debate will happen.